Do you think that in today's world, an architect's ability to produce a beautiful sketch is something that is that relevant? That's what we're gonna be breaking down together today. But for that, I will show you first a few sketches of world-renowned architects. Then I'll go off to show you a few tips I've developed over the years, why not? And then you'll see all this in action as I apply it for this multi-residential project I'm currently working on. But first, we have to break it down and draw the differences, pun intended, between a sketch and an actual drawing. And the fundamental difference is that a sketch is actually a communication tool. And as such, it carries with it a certain force or power because the emphasis is actually placed on whatever we want to actually communicate. There is also a sense of expediency associated with this sketch, which means often that sketches are usually done in a very fast pace. So you're not slowing down to draw textures, or to draw, maybe you do draw shadows to show how a volume plays with another, but you almost leave it at that. Here are a few examples of sketches done by brilliant architects, which I admire enormously, and they're all Pritzker Prize winners. So let's start with this one, Soto Moura. This is a sketch he did for the Stadio Braga. This other one by Renzo Piano. This one he did for the Centro Pompidou. Then you have Frank Gehry, and you can probably guess that this sketch was done for the Bilbao Museum. This one was actually done by my son. Now, if you go deeper, you also have some other architects who use some other mediums, who don't even draw with pencils. Well, I'm sure they do, but their sketches, they show behind the projects they make that actually reflect the main ideas, are actually sometimes made with other mediums, such as LCR, one of my favorite architects. They use what I think are watercolors to show an idea. This is the Soulages Museum in the south of France. Then you have some other architects who take it even further up a notch and do proper paintings, such as my compatriot from Argentina, from the office, Peso von Erlichhausen. She paints some beautiful paintings of the buildings they actually make, which are also beautiful. Now, I'm not sure if this is behind the process of the project itself or not. I'd like to think it is. But I'm sure that these paintings were actually fed with other sketches, such as Zaha, the famous architect Zaha Hadid. She also does some beautiful paintings for her projects, and I know that these paintings were part of her process. I think that these paintings, as beautiful as they are, they escape the realm of proper sketches. Because although they convey the idea powerfully, they do not fall under the criteria of being expedient. Quite the contrary. I would imagine it takes quite some time to develop these paintings. So now let's move on to the nitty-gritty, and I will share with you a few tips I picked up over the years. Okay, here's my 5 tips. Tip number 1. Draw from your shoulder. This is one of the most important ones. When you're drawing a straight line, you don't draw like this. Or I'm exaggerating that, but you draw more from your shoulder and you leave everything else fixed. You leave everything from here on to your hand fixed. That way you can really draw some proper straight lines, or you should be able to at least. Tip number 2. Warm up, like in anything. Warm up before you actually get into drawing a proper sketch. You can just take a few minutes and warm up. Draw some vertical lines, always leaving everything fixed, moving your arm entirely. Do also some proper horizontal lines and go at it. Try and do lines as close as possible if you wish. Now, my pencil is a bit soft, so I cannot draw too close because it would just smudge on. But you know what I'm trying to say. Just challenge yourself into drawing lines which are one close to the other and see how parallel you can get them. That way you get more confidence into actually drawing. These drawings by Picasso, they transmit confidence because the guy was crazy. This is tip number 3. When you're going to draw a line, let's say I have to draw a line from here all the way to here, you can do several practice runs. And then when you have to finally draw the line, you're gonna be closer to your mark. That's a tip I picked up over the time. It actually works. Now, tip number 4, and this one is for me one of the most important ones other than drawing from the shoulder. When you're drawing, please do your lines in one stroke. Don't do what we call in Spanish a línea peluda, where you go like this and you transmit everything but professionalism and confidence. Architecture is about transmitting confidence because there's a lot at stake. And to me, this transmits a lot more confidence than a perfectly straight line that has these smudges because the guy did not just have the confidence of going at it at once. And then my final tip for you today would be to cross your lines. You know, when you're drawing a box, for instance, I'm drawing a square, I'm crossing my lines at every corner. I'm not leaving them unattached because that would just seem sloppy to me. For me, that is not a proper square, whilst this is. And closely related to this, when you're drawing a square, just don't do like that because it would be hard to have these corners sharp. These corners are admittedly quite sharp, but normally they're more curvy, and this just loses the sense of the square that you're trying to transmit. So again, do your strokes at once, but then each stroke should be independent from the other. Okay, now let me just show you how I apply what I just said, my basic tips I just gave. But before I do you listen to that? That's Yeituei. That's a band which I'm actually becoming quite fond of, and they're excellent, and I'm going to give them a big shout out because they're letting me use their music in my videos. So thank you, Yeituei, and have a listen while I work. I'm going to be sketching out the project I'm currently working on of a multi-residential building here in La Hulpe. What I did there was I threw this line, which is at a more or less 45-degree angle, which means that this distance is the same as this one. And I did it twice because I know that the height of my building is 7 meters and the depth is 12 meters. So it's more or less twice. That helps me get my proportions right. So here is 3.5, that's a story, so the floor would be this high. This would be the second story. And then the middle of the building would be here. My roof is also about 45 degrees, so there. And you see, as I'm drawing, I'm crossing over my lines. I am keeping my lines as straight as possible, and if they're not straight, I don't really care. They're as straight as I can. I'm also keeping my drawing quite light at the beginning. I also said I want to have, so if this is half my building, another half would be here, another half would be here. This would be 4 times 3 meters, so 3, 3, 3, 3. This is what I wanted to keep very, very high to have a more qualitative space. As I was saying before, I'm having all this be one of my units. And here I have a parking space. And here I have my garden, my park, whatever. Keeping my units like this allows me to avoid any vis-a-vis. So I have my private garden for 2 of the units because this repeats twice over. I'm drawing this project. My project is going to be divided like that, and I'll have 2 units, one on top of the other here, and the same here. Although I'm having 2 and 2, that doesn't mean that I want the facade to be symmetrical. So that's something I'm gonna have to be working on later as I'm working on the facade, which is not going to be looking like that. Now, as I said, I want my living room to have a taller height than standard, but maybe not as tall, probably not at double height, because that proportion would be just a little bit too high also. I think my car is a bit out of proportion. I think it should be more like that. So again, I'm happy sharing my mistakes with you. You do mistakes as you're sketching, and that's fine. If this is a person, yeah, that could be a person. So I want this level to be around this high, so half a level, because also I want to avoid having additional volumes. I want to keep my volume as compact as possible, not only for preserving energy, but also because I'm mindful of my budget. You see, I know I'm having a rather dull looking project, but that is better than having no project at all. At least I'm adding quality inside my space. And if I had to add something there, I would have to start working with this kind of thing here. And that is costly. That adds a lot of cost, doesn't add a lot of space. So that's something this is something I'm trying to avoid. That's why I'm reducing, I'm not starting here, because I only have, if from here to here I have 3 meters, I only have about a meter here. So if I go further down, I can have a higher height. That starts to work without having the need to do this kind of operation. I want to have this kind of thing also working here. So I want to stop my second level here in this unit. And then my third level is gonna have to stop somewhere there, because I simply don't have the height here and here. Now the problem I see when I do this section now is that if I stop this level here, this is where I'm gonna have a bedroom, and my bedroom is not going to be able to face out like that. I can, however, as I look at this section, I can draw some light from here and from here. That could be quite interesting, but at the same time, I'm not really required to have ventilation now, because ventilation, basically by law, has all to be done mechanically. I know it sounds horrible, and I'm actually against it, but this is the direction I'm being pushed in. Now, that being said, I can have this be a glazed wall, so that we can have this relation from here to here, which is an interesting relationship, I think. And then I can also have windows. For this unit, I can have windows in this wall facing into this area, which could also be a park. So if we're looking from the parking space, and these are my 2 units, I think this is not entirely proportion, but if this is my parking space here in front, I can have my window here, a big massive window actually, for the living room and the bedroom, facing this way, and here I can have another tree. So that starts already to look a bit nicer, and I can probably do the same thing on the opposite if I don't do that strange triangle thing, if I don't do that strange triangle thing and I cut my building here, I can have that same operation so that I have some sort of direct communication outdoors rather than through a living room, and that could work. So you see, this is how I do sketches. I continue my lines, and then if I want to add some more power to them, I normally draw a lot smaller, but because I normally a very rushed person. But I can just grab a fine liner and then just go over my lines. Close here. I don't want to start working on the thickness of the walls and the elements and things. It doesn't really matter. But this is the problem of this, working with this scale. And here I can have light, light. But again, these are things that my sketch are sending me to explore. It's not something that really needs to happen or whatever. And I'm trying to keep everything as loose as possible. Okay, hope you got something out of this. And don't forget to subscribe if you want to see how this project evolves. See you in the next one.